Hi, Sharon.
Hi.
I am Joyce Spence. I was Joyce Taylor when we knew each other long ago in Worland. And I'm here today. It's October 10th, 2022. I'm in Oregon, and we're going to be talking about your memories of being and growing up in Worland, Wyoming. This project has two main goals. One is to talk about what it was like to be growing up in those post World War II years from 1941 to 1960. And the second goal is really how those experiences might have affected you as an adult. These transcriptions are going to be part of the archives of the Washakie County Museum and Cultural Center and will be available for your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and who knows who else to hear our stories about our experiences in Worland. So to start off, I'd like to ask you uh, what your official name is, first of all, and secondly, how you and your family got to Worland, Wyoming.
Okay, my official name is Sharon Lee Chagnon, Frisbee. My folks, my dad was living in Montana. We were in Havre, Montana. My dad had an opportunity to buy into the Triangle Packing Company, so he did, and we moved from Havre down to Worland in 1947. And we lived in a house that was in the spot where now First National Bank drive-through is. And that's how we got here. And then he went to work out there. What else did
So
you want?
what are your memories about that first house when you first moved down there?
Oh, it was fun. The wind would blow and the linoleum in the house would buckle, would just kind of like a wave. So my mother would say, go stomp it down. So my sister and I got to stomp down the linoleum. And so we stomped all the linoleum down and had them all doing it. Excuse me. And so anyway, it had 2 bedrooms and it had a runway. Well, we run it. Coming from the dining room into 1 bedroom, and then the bathroom was there, and then the other bedroom, but you could run around that little peninsula that was there. And so we chased each other all over the place. And anyway, it was a nice place. We lived next door to Dr. and Mrs. Farling. And since my mama was nice and moved me, and my daddy moved me from my grandma and grandpa in Havre, I asked them if they could be my grandma and grandpa, and they said, okay. So Dr. and Mrs. Farling was my grandma and grandpa. And the Showalders lived on the opposite corner as the Farlings. And so we just kind of got around in that. We just, we'd walk around the corner and go to Reed's drugstore because we were just across the alley from them. And we'd go to this movie, Mother Would Let Us, once in a while. And of course, my sister would sneak in once in a while. But that's, we didn't stay there for quite a while. We then moved to Thomas, and we got a house out in Thomas and on Thomas Avenue. And Mr. Thomas would come down the street and play Santa Claus. And so we would have him coming down and for Santa Claus. May Day, we'd run down and put a little basket of flowers on his porch and knock on the door and run, but he'd always catch us. He was pretty fast. Peggy Steele and them lived just through the block from us, or next down the block from us. And then Kathy and them lived on just straight across in their house. Then we bought some ground, and I helped my dad build the house that we lived in at 809 Culbert, or 908 South 8th. And we lived there, but I helped him build it. I was my dad's little boy. So that's the extent of what I've lived in down there or here.
So what do you remember about starting school?
Oh, we started the first grade in the basement of the high school. Kathy was there too. And so was the twins, Mary Lee and Marilyn Cody, and Vicki Brownell was in that. And we had Mrs. Dyer as our first grade teacher. They started telling us we had to have fire drills. So we had fire drills a couple times. Us kids obeyed and went out the windows. But then one time we decided we didn't know how to do it and let Mrs. Dyer show us. Well, she got stuck in the window and we laughed. So we went out the door and they got her out of the window. But, you know, it wasn't very nice of us, but that's what happened. My dad would give us a bad time and say, it took you 12 years to get through high school. And then we went over, after first grade, we went to Southside. And we were there till fifth grade, I think it was. And because we never went over to the north side. We never went to Watson's school. Did you, Kathy?
Were there more than one school in Worland at that time?
Yeah, there was the Watson building, there was Southside, and there was the high school and the middle school.
Emmett building was,
Emmett building.
the Emmett building was right next to the Watson building.
Mhm.
But Southside School wasn't opened until middle of our fifth grade year.
Oh, that's right. We did go over there. We went to the Watson building. And that's where we did go. I forgot about that. And yeah, and then when we got in fifth grade, we went to the South Side.
So who were your best friends during those years as you were growing up?
I had the Cody twins, Mary Lee and Marilyn Cody. I had Vicki Brownell, Janet and Jolene Henry, and we're still close friends. We still keep in contact and make sure that everybody's okay and what's going on. We still are that close. And
Isn't that special that
It is.
you still have those friends
Mhm, mhm.
that you knew each other when you were little kids getting in trouble?
Yeah, we did get in a little bit of trouble. My mother had the cleanest windows on 8th Street that anybody had, because every time my sister and I got into a fight, one was on the inside and one was on the outside washing windows. 81 windows in that house. I hated windows, but you know, we learned our lesson not to fight. So, but yeah, and we had a lot of fun. And even to this day, the girls will, we'll contact at least once a week. We call each other and talk to each other and see how each other's doing. And I haven't been able to get to Billings to see Marilyn because Marilyn is in a nursing home and Mary Lee is in an assisted living. But I haven't been able to get to Billings because I had to go through a bunch of tests. So that's okay, but I passed them all. So.
Good. Well, when you got into middle school and high school, what sorts of activities were you involved in?
I was in band. I was in choir. I did I did track. I was, as short as I am, I even jumped the, what do you call them? Those things that you jump over. And hurdles, yeah. I done some hurdles and I done basketball, but at that time we didn't have any competition for basketball. We just played each other. But that's what I was involved in.
Do you have any special memories of teachers that were important to you or that you especially liked or disliked?
Yeah, I loved June Collier. He was the sweetest thing that ever walked. And we were getting ready to go on a band trip or whatever. And they called us and we were all lined up at the bus getting ready to go. And they notified us and said he had passed away that morning. So we didn't get to go. And that was heartbreaking. And I also liked Joe Kinlan. He was next door to my mom and dad. He was a sweetheart. And I also liked, what was her, Mrs. Chastain in typing and shorthand and that. And those were basically my favorite ones.
Did you major? Did you have any special interests while you were in high school? That you mostly liked to do as far as the classes you took?
I love typing. I could, I set a goal for me to type really fast and correct. And Mrs. Chastain was really proud of me because I could type. I could type over 100 words a minute. And she said, that's great, but I had nimble fingers, and I could do that. And outside of that, I went to school, went to college in Denver for business. But I learned how to do the edit machine, the teletype, all of those. They don't even have them anymore. They don't even know what they are. But I got a degree in all of them. Well, that degree is being thrown out the window because nobody knows what it is anymore.
That's for sure. Now, did you make your living using your typing skill after you graduated from business school?
I know. I went to work for Ma Bell, and I worked there as a night operator. And when they closed, I was done with that job. And then I worked 11 and a half years as a certified nurse's aide. I worked 36 years as a school bus driver. I worked 5 years as a construction worker, which was making water buckets for under the helicopters. And so they could pick up the water in the lakes and put it on the fires. And I helped change the motor mounts and the PB4Ys, which were used in the Midway. And I was just a jack of all trades.
Wow, it sounds like you've had an amazingly interesting life. So talk to us about some of your adventures being a bus driver.
I had more fun with my kids on the bus. And they loved it. First of all, I started at NowCap and I trained all those bus drivers. And I got them all trained and told them, don't be sure and check your buses before you get off. Do not leave a child on there. Well, I had to fire one because she did leave a child on there. And it was on there for 3 hours. And that poor baby was crying and crying and crying. And it was a hot day. And I told her, I says, I told you when we first started, you get one chance on that and one chance only. You don't get 2 or 3. I said, you've got to remember this stuff. I said, those kids are important. So we got that taken care of and she left. And then I had to go through, it was 9 hours of training to learn how to order buses and what was needed in the engines and what was needed as a chassis and all of that, and what needed for, seats and seat belts and qualified for the kids, because we hauled little ones around. I mean, there was babies that we hauled in the NowCap buses. So, and then I went to work for just driving a bus for Grable and Basin and that. And I had a route going out of Basin that was 5-hour route, 2.5 in the morning and 2.5 in the evening. And I had some very interesting kids on that bus. They were very nice, very good. And the parents were just pleased to death that I treated the kids correctly.
Interesting.
Interesting
in what way?
Well, I had one little boy get on the bus and he says, Sharon, he said, I've got something to tell you. And I said, oh, okay. And I thought maybe it was going to be like one other time when he told me about his mom and daddy fighting. And I said, what is it? And he said, I can't tell you with my sister's here. So I said, okay. And so I sent the sisters to the back of the bus looking for a pin that somebody had lost, which I couldn't find, and they found it. But anyway, when they were gone, I said, all right, what is it that you wanted to tell me? He says, I'm going through puberty. I about ripped the steering wheel off the bus because I did not expect anything like that to come out. But the kids on that bus, I hauled 63 kids. And all 63 of those kids felt like they could get on that bus and they could tell me anything. It didn't matter. And I had one little girl get on she wouldn't get on the bus. And I said, what's the matter? And she says, I don't want to go to school. There's a boy there that's hurting me. And I said, is he bullying you? And she says, yeah. I said, all right, get on the bus. And her mama says, what are you going to do? And I says, I'm just going to go into the office and have a talk with the secretary. And she's, okay, good. So I took the girl and I went and said, you just stay with me and we'll go around to the front of the school and we'll go in. So we went in and I talked to the secretary there and I said, we have a problem. I said, there's bullying out on that playground. And I said, they're throwing rocks at these girls and stuff. And I said, that should not be qualified to do out there. No, who is it? Well, the little girl told her. And so the kid got punished. But if the little girl hadn't spoke up, he'd have got away with it, because they don't, there's so many kids out there on that playground that they don't see everything. But I helped out sometimes on the playground, just being an observer. Of course, I had dozens of kids right around me, so you couldn't really see very much because they were all right there. And but it's just that. And I decorated my bus for every holiday. I didn't care what it was. If it was St. Patty's Day, it had green in it, and I made little green nests and put candy in it and hung them from the racks up above, and they could look at it and that. But I had it hid. I had nesting up around it so they couldn't see what was in it. But when St. Patty's Day and their time to go, they got it. It was theirs. I done it for Valentine's Day. I done it for Easter. I had little Easter bunnies that I had made and slit the back of them and stuffed candy in them. And then I had little 6-inch stockings that I done at Christmas time. And I had kids from kindergarten clear through senior. And I would stuff that stocking with something every day from the 1st of December all the way through till they got to go on their break. And my seniors even would sit there and I said, you could feel, but you can't peek. Well, they'd be looking at it and feeling, and I think I know what that is. And they'd say, I said, no, that's not what it is. It isn't? And so they'd be curious. Curiosity just sometimes kills a cat, but it didn't these kids. They just enjoyed it. So the day they got to go home on their Christmas vacation, they were all lined up to get their stockings. If they didn't ride home with me, they were outside the bus waiting to get their stockings. And so they got their stockings, and I done this for years. And some of my kids, they say, I still got all those stockings. I said, good. But I made the bus trip a fun bus trip.
Wow.
And I always met them with a smile. Always met them with, a good greeting, because you don't know what they have at home.
Right. Well, that leads me to another question, Sharon, which is, it sounds like you were an amazing influence on many, many kids. So my question is, growing up in Worland as you did throughout your childhood, what do you think you learned growing up in Worland that produced this warm and generous person that you turned out to be?
Respect everybody. Not everybody is perfect. I've told my kids on my bus, I said, I have a #1 rule, and it's over and above the schools. And they wanted to know what it was. And I said, if you can't say anything nice about someone, you don't say anything at all. And they would tell the new kids when they got on, be sure and obey Sharon's #1 rule. But I never had to expel a kid off the bus. I never had any problems with them, because I loved them. I love kids, and they knew it. And I would, I was there if they needed me. I would go to their programs. I would go to their stuff. And they knew that I was there if they needed me. I had one little girl that, I really don't want this on the tape, but I had to call the police to get her taken care of, because she was getting treated wrong. And so we got that taken care of, and she got into a safe place. But, I knew how the kids were acting, how they were behaving, if they were kind of quiet, if they were back and didn't have anything to say. And my kids on my bus were playing cops and robbers around the corners of the seats. And this one little boy gets on and he says, what are they doing? And I said, oh, they're pretending they're cops and robbers. And he says, how do you pretend? And I went, okay, what do you say to that? So I told him, I said, it's imagination. Oh, okay. So then he got in it. But before, he was a lone little boy that just sat in the seat and wouldn't get into anything. And after that, he got into it. And the last day of school, we'd have a water gun fight on the bus because I gave them out popsicles. Well, they dripped and it was sticky. And so we had a water gun fight on the bus and it helped clean the bus.
That's a great story, Sharon. I love the idea that you and Kathy and the Cody sisters and all these people grew up together.
Mhm.
I didn't have that opportunity when I was growing up. And I think that those experiences for you all being part of a group that you know one another almost 80 years, and that is just so special, I think, and I would think that you probably feel the same way.
I do. I do. Oh, and we had Jerry and Judy Baker too was with us. That was our another group. And I mean, we keep track of everybody. We talk to everybody. We see how everybody's doing. If they're having a bad time, I do. I call them all and let them know. And I let them know what the other one's doing. And so we keep a circle going. Everybody knows. And now we have Mary Elise White in there. And so, you know, we've just gained a lot. And we'll put Kathy in there since she needs help.
Well, that's good because Lord knows we all need help, don't we?
Yes. Yes, we do. We definitely all need help. And if you can't, you know, I worked with a bus driver that the first day of school, she said, oh my God, how many more days is there of school? And I thought, why are you driving bus if you hate kids? I loved kids. I loved every one of them. And there wasn't a bad one in my group as far as I was concerned, because you could talk them into being nice or whatever. They didn't have to be nasty. And you could listen to them and talk to them. I had kids staying on the bus before they went into the school, just wanting to talk because they couldn't talk at home. There was other things going on at home, so they wanted to talk. And I'd listen. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to listen.
Well, it sounds like, Sharon, that you learned how to listen and have respect from your own family
Mhm.
there growing up in Worland.
Mhm. My mother was very, very fond and very religious about the fact is that you respect everybody, regardless color, race, whatever. You respect them all. And you treated them as you would want to be treated. And us girls, we didn't have anybody that we hated. There was nobody we hated or pushed aside. You know, we tried not to. And because they're just, you know, they're people. God put them on this earth for a reason. They're people. And you respect them.
Well, that's a lovely, lovely attitude. I'm wishing that more people had that, especially these days. Is there anything else, Sharon, that you would like to share for this historical project that if you had a child or grandchild watching this, that you would like to be saying to them?
I've said a lot of things to my grandkids, my great grandkids, and that I have. Well, I started out with 4 grandkids. Now I have 8 because I got married, and then I started out with 4 grandkids, 5 grandkids, great grandkids, and now I'm going to have another one pretty soon. And I just tell them, you know, you've got to just be the best you can, and they all know it, and they are. Some of my great grandkids would rather come over here than go to their grandma's place. They would love to just spend the time. My one great grandson said he wants to just move in with me. And I said, well, let's just take it a little at a time, please. But, you know, and I have things for the kids to do. We don't sit and watch TV. That my youngest sister, Kathy, I don't know if you guys remember her or not, but she's a speech pathologist, or was a speech pathologist, and got her doctor's degree for ear, nose, and throat. She went to Hawaii for an in-service. I told her I'd pack her suitcase. She said, no, it didn't need to be. But anyway, she went to Hawaii and went to an in-service, and they learned which has sat with me forever, is these kids that you put in front of a TV and let them sit and watch that TV. That constant stimulation can cause ADHD kids. And I said, you're kidding. And she said, no. She says, they've proven it. So I don't, my kids would get on the bus, they'd have their little electronic things. And I'd say, okay, you got 10 minutes. I know. So in 10 minutes, they put it up and say, what are we going to do now? And I says, well, let's go through the alphabet. Who can find A? And I had high school kids trying to find the A on signs. They couldn't use a bus, but they found them on signs or whatever. And we went clear through the Z's all the way into school. And they were having fun. But I just don't, and I don't let my great grandkids sit in front of a TV. My mother would not turn a TV on until 5 o'clock at night. Then you got to watch TV for 2 or 3 hours, and then you had to go to bed on a school night. But it didn't hurt them any. In fact, they kind of like it. They watch their watches now and say, it's time. Okay. So, they don't have to, it's something they like to do. I took all 4 of my grandkids before they were married. I took all 4 of them. There's 3 girls and a boy. And I took them up the mountain and we camped in a campsite up there. And I'll tell you, it was interesting. I got 2 girls that are almost the same age. One turns one age at the beginning of the year and the other one turns the same age at the end of the year. And like fight, ooh, those little devils that fight. So I put them in the camper and I said, all right, you guys can sit in there and talk to yourselves or whatever, look at each other until you decide you can come out without fighting. My grandson said, Grandma, are you really going to do that? And I said, yeah. I said, do you want to hear the fighting? No. And my youngest granddaughter says, good. So, they knew that I didn't put up with it. There was rules, but they still had a good time.
Kathy, do you have anything you'd like to add to this great conversation with Sharon?
Thank you. Sharon, when you were growing up, I remember you as kind of mischievous.
Yeah, I was. But I got caught 2 times and I got in trouble. So then I kind of got out of it. But
so tell me a couple of the mischievous things you did. Because we've heard how you are such a model adult. And I'm just wondering if you were such a model child.
No. I had a biology class and I was in the biology class and I had some girls in there that were, oh, I don't want to touch that. I don't want to touch that. So I called my dad and I said, can you bring me in some eyeballs? Because we were going to dissect it. And so my dad put them in a plastic bag and they were looking all around, plastic bag, clear. Brought them in, set them there, and I took them in and, oh, you should have heard those girls scream and holler. And I thought, you wussies. And so then one day he had just butchered a cow and I said, okay, Daddy, we need a heart in here. Well, the heart will beat once it's out of the cow for a little bit of time. It doesn't die once the cow dies, it beats a little bit. So he brought it in and it was still beating. And I had girls running out of that room, up chucking, getting sick. And I thought it was funny. The boys thought it was neat and I thought it was funny. You never knew what I was going to pull.
Anything else like the magpies?
No, I was careful. I didn't do property damage or, damage to people's places or anything like that. I didn't do that. But if I could pull a practical joke on somebody, I would. And, because what's life if you can't laugh? There's too many downhearted people. You need to laugh. It takes less muscles to laugh than it does to frown.
How did you happen to end up with 2 sets of twins for your closest friends?
It just happened. Mary Lee and Marilyn, when we lived on Thomas, you went through a vacant lot and down there was a grocery store halfway down the block. It was there by the Edith Haley house.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Janet and Jolene were up just a ways from there. So we got to being friends with them. And then Mary Lee and Marilyn was just around the corner, and I got to be in friends with them. And then Jerry and Judy came, and I just got to be in friends with them. We had a lot of fun. So Vicki and I decided if they were all going to be twins, we are too. So Vicki and I were twins.
I don't remember Janet and Jolene. So you were friends with 3 sets of twins.
Janet and Jolene were twins. Jolene was a year older than Janet, but they always ran around like twins. They
Okay.
always went. And but they came, I think when we were in about 4th or 5th grade, that's when they moved in. And but you know, I didn't have enemies. I mean, some people thought they were my enemies, but I didn't have enemies. I had friends. And a lot of times you couldn't talk to some of them because they were, you know, a little offstandish. You didn't want to, you know, interfere in their little area. So you just went around it. But I had friends, you know, and I still have friends. I don't think I even know a stranger. Because even in the neighborhood I'm living now, I have Janice Foss's uncle and his wife lives next door to me. And Kay is a speech pathologist or speech teacher in the school, and she retired. She lives on the other side of me. And I mean, it's like talking over the fence. We all talk. We all have fun. We all gather together and have whatever, beer, you know, whatever we want. And we visit and we help each other. So, you know, and then I have a couple across the alley from me, and shoot, they're special. They help me, but you know, I don't have enemies. I don't believe in enemies.
How did you end up going back to Worland? What caused that?
Well, I was living in Grable, and of course I lost
Wait,
my.
you were in Denver. Last we heard you were in Denver and you did the business course, and then you worked for the phone company.
Yeah, I worked for the phone company in Worland. Okay, then I got married in 1963, and I had my son in 1964. And my husband moved around because he was construction, so I moved with him. And we ended back in Denver, and then we ended up in Broomfield, and then we ended up in Grable, and then I ended up down here. So it was just kind of, you know, just moving around. But
Was he from Worland?
yeah, it was Clyde and Ethel Frisbee's kid on 809 Culbertson. Ethel worked for the hotel as a waitress, and Clyde worked for the BLM as a leveler. He drove the blade around.
Did you know I used to live at 809 Culbertson before we built the house?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I knew that.
Well, you know everything.
No, I don't. No.
So I have another question. Joyce, do you have questions? Because I have some more questions.
Well, I would just say I lived on Culbertson, there on the corner of 10th, and in that house on the corner, right down from the high school.
Yeah, you
Right
did.
across the street from where my grandparents lived.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that right?
Uh-huh.
I didn't know that.
Uh-huh.
I
Small
didn't
world.
know that.
Well, it's a small town.
It is a small town, and
It was a real small town.
well, I don't have any more questions.
I'm wondering
myself.
a couple of things. So this is so typical of what a transition we were with what girls got to do. The fact that you were really good in typing, so you went to business school, but before it was all over, you were doing all this mechanical work with helicopters that were for fighting forest fires.
Mhm.
And then you did all that work with the buses so that you knew, it sounded like you were doing some of the mechanical work with the buses.
Yeah, I carried a belt with me because there was nobody, and a lot of the cell service was bad out there. And if I broke my belt, then I could get in the engine and replace the belt and get back into town or get the kids home. Yeah, I learned how to do all of that stuff. I helped build recover a plane that had blown off the runway and with steel, and I bucked a lot of rivets, but I was adventurous. I wanted to learn everything I could possibly learn, and I was out to learn it. And I guess I learned just about everything I could learn.
Here's another question. Did World War II impact your life? Because most of us were, well, we all were conceived right before Pearl Harbor or right after Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, it affected our life. My dad went into the service. Well, he applied for the Navy, and he went in there, and they swore him into the Navy. And then they come in and said, we need 5 volunteers for the Marine Corps. And they went, you. So they swore him out of the Navy, discharged him out of the Navy, and swore him into the Marine Corps. He was in Okinawa and Guadalcanal and all of them. And my mother and I and my sister moved down to Ogden to be with her twin sister and her 2 kids. And my mother went to work in a canning factory down there. And she had the Chinese people, or that they had put them to work over here. The people that they had got, they put them to work over here, and it was in charge of them. And she said, it didn't take them long to understand what I said. She didn't understand their language, but they did understand her. But she was only 4'11", and a couple of them thought they could walk right over the top of her. Well, it didn't work. And so her area was the most productive area at getting the cans and stuff out. Then I can remember standing in line and waiting with our coupons and that for our stuff, like sugar and flour and stuff. And of course, my mother didn't have a car and didn't drive. So she traded her rubber coupons for more sugar, because Aunt Betty loved the sugar, and more stuff like that. So mother would trade her coupons. And then I can remember the green stamps. Do you remember them?
I do. S&H green stamps.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, but we were just kind of average people, but we had to stay where we were. And so that we moved down and took care of each other, and that's what we done.
Do you remember when your father came home?
Yeah, he came home June 1945. He came home in June of 1945. And
How old were you when he came home?
no, it was later than that, because Linda was there. So Linda's 5 years younger than I am. So he came home about 46, I guess. And I was 5 years old at the time. No. I was born in 42, was 5, so I was 4 years old. No. Well, Daddy came home later. I don't remember exactly the date, but I know I was 6 years old when Daddy came home, and Linda was 1. And then we moved.
How could Linda be 1 when your dad came home?
Well, it got to leave for a while, and it didn't take much. And Kathy was consumed, or Linda was consumed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did your father, I would think he had PTSD. Was it kind of a shock to have your father home?
Yeah, it was. And I was a curious kid. And I'd ask him, I'd say, what's going on? What happened? What were you doing? And he said, Sharon Lee, we do not talk about it. Okay. So he would not talk about the war at all. He would not. And he was a little different, but he managed, with my mother's help and him, they talked it out, got things going, and he managed to go on with his life, and my mother too. But it was hard. I could see it, I could remember it. But they just went on with their life. It was, that was a bad time of the year, or time. And that we lost a lot of people that year through that war.
I don't think I have any other questions. Joyce, do you have any other things?
I don't either. I would just say this has been a wonderful experience hearing your story, Sharon. And as you may remember, I didn't live in Worland very long, and I didn't get to know you very well in high school, but I would love to get to know you more, and I hope that we have an opportunity to meet in person one of these days.
Well,
So
one of these days, God willing, we will. I know I told Kathy I'm going to be her friend because she said she didn't have any. I said, well, then you're stuck with me. So that's it.
Well, I would
My friends all moved
thank
except
you
for
again.
Ricky and
Thank you
Grant.
again for joining.
You remember dragging Maine and going to the only stoplight and calling a Chinese fire drill, getting out and running around the vehicle and get in before the light changes?
You know, I didn't do that,
Oh, we did.
but I did
Yeah.
drag Maine.
We did. And then there used to be a tennis court where the South Side School is. And Vicky had a 1947 Chevy. And we were having a dance over there at the tennis court. And Vicky says, let's go. And I said, okay. And she went right across that field. Well, there was a big hole in the field. And the whole front end of the car fell in. And so we went over to the tennis court and asked the kids if they could come help us get it out. So a bunch of boys come over and lifted the front out, pushed it over. We went around that hole and went to the dance and had a gay old time.
I bet. I bet.
Well, at least you didn't drag Maine backwards.
No,
That's what Ray Godfredson said he and his buddies did.
yeah, they did. Scared the devil out of everybody. Here you see this car coming backwards down the road and the lights are going the other way. Yeah. Mhm. My dad, I laughed at him. He says, all right, you can, but stay in town. Don't go out of town. I said, I won't. So he gave me the vehicle to, go. I put 46 miles on that vehicle, just dragging Maine. And my dad says, how in the world can you put 46 miles on that vehicle just up and down that main street? I said, it's not hard.
My dad started at the Worland machine, which had International Harvester. They started selling Chrysler cars, and we got a new DeSoto station wagon one time when I was in high school. And one night my father said to my mother, you know, the rear tires are looking kind of worn on the station wagon. I don't know how that could be. And I just sat there like I didn't make a single expression, but of course I was trying to peel out from the stoplight.
I did that with my mom's Wildcat Buick. I went out to the A&W, of course I worked out there too. Got something to drink and they had just spread gravel. And so I stepped on it and it spun around and I threw gravel and I hit the back end of the A&W, went through the jars and everything. And the owner come out and he says, boy, Sharon, he says, it's a good thing you didn't come in. I said, I was scared to death. So I had to call my mother and she says, oh God, let me get somebody to help me get down there. So she got somebody down there. And do you remember the police officer, Tiny? Okay, he came and he said, let me see your driver's license. For the life of me, I could not find that driver's license. No way. I was so scared. And my mother says, well, we can't drive this car. And he says, sure you can. He reached down and he pulled that bumper out where I'd put it into the tire. He says, now you can get it home, Jean. I knew I was going to be dead then because he just, tough kid, just pulled that out. My dad come home at lunch and he says, well, did you learn your lesson? And I said, yeah. He said, well, get ready. You're going back to work tonight. I don't want to go to work. Tell everybody will know I did this. He says, you're going to work. And I did. I was so embarrassed, but I never tried peeling out again.
Sharon,
that looks like
you're one of the best storytellers. Maybe you're the best storyteller in our class. And I had no idea.
Oh, I had an interesting life. Mary Lee and Marilyn and I jumped the railroad out there at my dad's plant. We jumped onto a boxcar because the train had slowed down. So we jumped onto a boxcar and we were going to ride it into town because we didn't want to have to walk. And so we rode it into town, but the train didn't stop. It sped up and we ended up in Grable. I had to call my dad and he had to come and get us. And he said, you will never, ever, ever do that again. No, we thought we were going to have to end up in Timbuktu. We didn't know where we were going to go, but we were scared to death that we couldn't get back home. But he came and got us, bless his heart. And we didn't try that again. We walked.
Wow.
Oh, there's
I
lots.
love these stories. You were a wild one, Sharon.
I was. Like I said, I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn everything I could possibly learn. I wanted to see what I could see. And I did. I learned everything I could possibly learn. And I'm still learning to this day. But, you know, you never learn enough. You've always got more to learn. And I'm enjoying my life.
Yep, me too.
I would say my happiest years have been since I retired. How about you, Joyce?
Well, the thing about being retired is you own your own time. My dad used to say, when you go to work, you're renting your time to the man. You owe the man a good day's labor,
Mhm.
and but he owns your time. He, she, whoever it is. So when I retired, that was my thing. Like, okay, this is my time, and I can do whatever I want. I can take a nap, or I can not take a nap, or whatever. I think it's an amazing thing to be able to do whatever you want. So with your time, because you know, time is the only thing we have that's really
That's right.
valuable, isn't it?
Right. Well, I retired when I was 75, driving school bus, but I've had more schools contact me. Please, will you come and drive for us? No. Because the group that's coming up now, I call it the X group, because they don't have respect for themselves, let alone anybody else. And I'm afraid them and me would clash because, you know, they can say the F word anytime they want to, and the teacher can't do anything about it. No, I can't understand that at all. My kids won't even say it at all. They're very cautious on saying any bad words because I don't approve of it. My grandmother told me a long time ago, she said, if you can't say anything without using those words, you've got nothing to say. And that's true.
Sharon, what were your bus routes?
I went out to Emblem. I went to Shell. I went to
Who were you
down the river.
driving? But who were you driving for? Those kids don't come into Worland to school.
No, I was driving for Grable. I'd drive up to Grable and drive. And then I was driving for Basin, and they gave me that Hyattville run, and I loved it. But I'd have to leave at 5:30 in the morning. There'd be times I'd go out on that Hyattville run and snow would be up above the bumper of the bus. And I'd go out and blaze the trail, and then pretty soon when I'm coming back in, here comes the snowplows following my trail.
Why didn't you drive for Worland?
Worland didn't need me at the time. Now they want me, but they didn't need me at the time. So I just, I just went to work where I could. And I'm pretty proud. My kids on my bus, when they turned 16, I said, okay, you've got to break my record on tickets. And they said, oh, how many tickets did you have? I said, I had one overtime parking ticket in Worland. And I said, I've never had a ticket since. Oh, okay, I can break that. Well, I had a kid come back to me and he says, Sharon, I didn't break your record. I said, what did you do? And he says, I got picked up for speeding. I said, why? Well, I was in a hurry. I said, did it help you to be in a hurry? No. Cost me money. I said, then you don't need to be in a hurry, do you? No.
Wow. This has been so joyous. Hasn't it been, Joyce, so interesting to hear everyone's stories?
It is amazing. And because the reality is that when we're young and in school and all, whether we like to admit it or not, we're really just kind of thinking about ourselves and our situation and our immediate friends. And we're not very open to really getting to know other people. Well, and we're not really mature enough either.
No.
So it's been great to have an opportunity to really get to know our former classmates in a much more meaningful way. So
Do you-
Thank you again. It's really been grand. Thank you, Kathy, for organizing all this.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye. Have a good day.